Hello everyone, nice to see you, cyberly see you all again. We are back for another fantastic episode of the In Out Crowd. Even though we're still needing to stay in, we are very much out, and we have some extra special things to be excited about tonight because it is officially the 1st of February, which means it's officially LGBTQ plus History Month. Now, some might be thinking, well, what exactly is involved in LGBTQ plus history? Well, let me tell you, it's not just a museum filled with Cher's old wigs carved from biblical stone and Madonna's debut album dating all the way back to 1947. No, you might be correct, but it is so much more. LGBTQ plus History Month acknowledges where we are currently in the world, not only in this country, but many countries around us. And it also pays homage to our pioneers that came before us. We're very lucky, even though things could be a lot better for us in the LGBTQ plus community. We are not unsafe and we are not illegal in this country. And it wasn't always that way. We've mentioned before on the In Out Crowd that unfortunately many people were arrested, they were put in prison. Many people unfortunately even died in order to progress our community forward. And of course, it's important that we do pay homage, because without the fabulousness of our historical ancestors, we wouldn't have Drag Race, we wouldn't have all of the amazing shows on Netflix, all of the fantastic podcasts, and certainly none of the queer media outlets that we are all so lucky to have as well. It's safe to say that we are kicking off this month with as much possible love and admiration for our pioneers as possible, particularly those who endured the storm clouds, so that we can enjoy an occasional rainbow every now and then. And speaking of such storm clouds, I think it's time that we acknowledge these in our next segment of the weather. Girl. It's raining men. Hallelujah, it's raining men. Up first tonight, we have some rainy storm clouds, unfortunately. Now, This isn't a first for the Weather Girls segment. However, would you believe that the storm clouds are in fact relating to the Grindr app? Aye. What's been happening is the LGBTQ plus dating app Grindr is facing an £8.5 million fine for illegally selling user data to advertisers. That's why you never include your face in any photos that you're sending there, everyone, okay? Norway's Data Protection Authority plans to fine the platform upwards of 100 million Norwegian crowns, or around 10% of Grindr's estimated global revenue. It has yet to reply to the BBC's request for a comment. However, in a statement to the New York Times, a spokesperson for Grindr said it had obtained valid legal consent from all of its users in Europe on multiple occasions and was confident its approach to user privacy is first class. Well, make sure next time you're having to agree to the new terms and conditions that we actually read all the way through them, eh? Next up, we have some fabulous rainbows all over the place here at the In Out Crowd, but particularly over America. As we can see here, thanks to President Joe Biden, it's safe to say he's had an energetic first few days, setting out his wide-ranging agenda on LGBTQ rights. A perfect refreshment after the horrendous couple of years the LGBTQ plus people in America have been facing. Many advocates have commended his decision to include pronoun choices in the White House contact form. He has also addressed workplace discrimination and transgender rights in the military, something that our previous ex-president, number 45, was also very vocal on, not always for the right reasons, safe to say. The focus on LGBTQ plus rights is being seen as a marked shift from the Trump administration. As mentioned, the pronoun form is now including he, she, they, them, other neopronouns, as well as an option to say other, to choose your own pronouns. Now, while this might seem as a small shift, the fact that there is an emphasis on pronouns for people contacting the White House is, again, a small step for the White House, but a massive leap forward from where we were before. Now, next up, the weather can't quite seem to make up its mind. That's nothing new here at the In Out Crowd, but particularly due to a new hate crime bill that has been passed by the Scottish Government. As we can see here, Cabinet Secretary for Justice that is trying to explain that they are open-minded and very much open-minded and very much open to any questioning that other people have to include any reform in the rights bill. Some people have said that it's controversial. It could see many people going to prison over difference of opinion rather than actual outward hate crime. However, Becky Kaufman, who is one of the spokespeople for the Scottish Trans Alliance and is also part of the Scottish Trans Alliance herself, is in support of the bill, saying that it is important that people meet the correct punishment, or the correct consequences rather, for saying certain things about particularly trans people, LGBTQ plus people and other marginalised groups. Now, Becky Kaufman is seen to be a little bit of a star here at the In Out Crowd, particularly after her interview with BBC News, and we are extremely lucky to have her taking a bit of a deep dive into LGBTQ plus activism, and particularly with the Scottish Trans Alliance. As mentioned, we are going to be doing a whole online festival almost here at the In Out Crowd, all to do with LGBTQ plus History Month. Becky has gracefully agreed to join us for a bit of an extended chat on the week of the 15th. However, we think it's only fair that we give you a little bit of a sneak peek into the current affairs that Becky is going to be discussing with us. Or, of course, as we call them here, our Raisin Liaisons.
I think that the other thing is, and this is something that can be quite challenging when you're facing those people who are afraid of difference, is I think back. So I'm down here in Johannesburg with my mother-in-law, who was born in 1940. So she's born at the beginning of the Second World War. She's lived through numerous different things. She lived through the fall of apartheid down here in South Africa. she lived through going from hardwired landline phones to everybody carrying around a mobile phone and computers and I mean, a lot of struggles. And the thing is, the amount of change that's happened in the 80 years of her life is the same as had happened in the 400 years prior to her life. And change is hard, and change is scary. And sometimes when you become overwhelmed with change, and we do, we live in a world that is changing so lightning fast, and people sometimes get scared. And the safest place is what you know. Even if what you know is actually a bad place, people will still often choose. You know, there's the old adage, I grew up in farm country, and there's the old adage that, you know, a horse, when panicked, will actually run into a burning barn. And it's true, because that's its safe place. And that's one of the things you have to come to grips with when you are different. And as we were talking before, we're only 1% of the population. We are different. You know, is you have to help people to embrace that very view that you just expressed, that actually the world is a more fun, more interesting, more entertaining place when you have a broader view and when you see more of it.
And that's all we're going to show you for just now. If you would like to see the rest of the conversation with myself and Becky and see me tearing up at a few things that Becky had to say, make sure that you tune in to the In-Out Crowd on the week of the 15th, whilst we see exactly what else Becky has to comment on with regards to LGBTQ plus activism. Now, as well as activism, LGBTQ plus rights and inclusion is often pushed forward by the artists in our community, be they dancers, musicians, comedians, and of course, drag artists. Here we're going to have a little conversation with a faith-based drag artist and a legendary lip-sync assassin of the region, Ivy Adamus. We're going to be chatting about how the historic act of drag performance has been included in their life, and also some of the questions that I'd like to pose her on how drag is helping push our community forward today. Let's have a wee chat with Ivy Adamus on our LGBTQ&A. Ivy Adamus. Hello there, Ivy. How are you doing tonight, this evening, this afternoon?
Whatever time it is at lockdown, I do not know what day it is. I'm just going off. I'm going, it looks about a Monday.
Yes, it's late May-tember 2025 or whatever it is.
Sounds about right that. Not done a gig since 1945, it feels like.
Well, with that then, in case anyone isn't aware of who Ivy Adamus is, would you like to give a brief introduction of who you are and what you do?
So my name is Ivy Adamus. I am a legendary lip-sync assassin, fashion disaster, and general walking mess. Ergo, I'm a drag queen. I have been performing in drag since 2016, come on my 5-year birthday this May. I have been working closely in and around Fife, particularly in Edinburgh, performing in nightclubs and at events, hosting shows, and just trying to bring a bit of fun and some activism to the land that is Fife. Because we all knew we needed it this time.
We absolutely do.
You're the first time I vibrated on spontaneous, but I was looking for.
We're always welcome for a vibrate on this live stream, don't worry about that.
Painfully, a random vibrate and it's got me through this lockdown.
Oh, I know. I'm sure that the sale of AA batteries has just skyrocketed over the last year. Oh, well, with that, I mean, it's obvious that you're such a character full of charisma, but who or what inspired you to begin drag in the beginning, and has your drag evolved since your little baby days 5 years ago?
So I actually today just saw a picture of me from summer 2019. Being an underage, I started drag when I found my character 15, 16-year-old. And so I was like, I couldn't perform at clubs, no one would really hire you. And so I spent a lot of my formative years, first 2 years, just playing with makeup, and that is what inspired me. Like, I originally started off being very punk and special effects. I was always gluing stuff to my face and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I still am, but it's just lashes now. But start for me was that. And then in 2018, I made like my big debut performance at Fife Pride, and I, funnily enough, I was on second or third, and I was waiting backstage I was on the main stage for Pride. I thought I would have been like the kiddie bit at the back, and the first act never showed up, and they went, next is Ivy Diamond. I originally was called Ivy Diamond. And so my debut performance was the opening act at Fife Pride 2018. I was at the point, oh my God. And I kind of went, I came off the stage, couldn't breathe, and went, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And so I like pursued it really far. And then I luckily right after that was able to get booked to do things like bridal showers and like hen parties, all that kind of stuff, and birthday parties. Because like if it's in a private venue, you can get booked there, which means it gave me a platform. Then in 2019, I met April Adamus, who was the host of Fife Pride. She's one of Fife's biggest, she's an international drag burlesque star. She took me under her wing, and I joined the House of Adamus, and we were basically Ivy and April versus the world for about half a year. And then at Pride 2019, we met my other drag sister, Ali Vera, who is one of the most phenomenal queens I know. She's a bio performer who performs all over, primarily in Dundee at Church, which is an underage show. And they inspire me so heavily. And growing up in drag, I was inspired by the first thing that came into my head was I still do a queen called Violet Grace. She used to paint herself bright purple, and she's sickening. Eli Buck was one of my biggest inspirations. I absolutely adore larger name queens such as like Aquaria, Violet Chachki, Asia O'Hara. I was very drawn to Drag Race, of course. And Alyssa Edwards, and it wasn't until about 2018 I realised that I could do some of the stuff that they were doing, like the dips, the splits, the cartwheels, because I did gymnastics and tap for God knows how long. Then, like, the pressures of toxic masculinity started, and that kind of went, no, we're not going to do that anymore. So that kind of, they inspired me heavily, and then, of course, my regular family inspire me daily, but who are like, you can do this, fight for this, you're good at this. And that's what I take into this. Every time I put on the wig, I put on the lashes, I'm going, I'm doing it for them, I'm doing it for me, I'm doing it because these people say I can do it. And that's what inspires me, like, all the time.
Totally. I think that's gorgeous how you're saying that, that also it's not just the people that we see on Drag Race, these big glittery stars, but also just everyday life is really inspiring to you as well. I think that's gorgeous.
The local community are a big inspiration in Kirkcaldy. I work with a company called the Dance Shack, who are based in Fife, I'm based in Hunter, and they were the first professional based group that actually gave me a big platform and allowed me to do my drag there. They allowed me to do their cabarets, at their shows, and they just kind of took me under their wing. Before I had April, before I had any other drag friends, they were the ones that were like, okay, we can get you booked in, we can get you performing here, which is who I basically owe most of my modern career to, as well as my drag family as well.
Sure, that's fantastic.
I'm going to get murdered for saying that. I could be April going, and what was that?
Well, it's no secret that, particularly in the last kind of 5 to 10 years, drag has totally skyrocketed in kind of mainstream popularity. But of course, for those of us in the LGBT plus community, drag has been one of the most important parts of our culture. How does it feel to be a part of a culture that is now so mainstream, but was really one of the most punk rock things that you could have ever done? And in many ways, as you said, with toxic masculinity cutting about our society still, how does it feel to be putting on the lashes, putting on the wig, when oftentimes there is still a lot of kind of backlash against that in the mainstream?
It's definitely a very uplifting thing. Every time I do it, I always have a sense of pride, and you feel like you have the weight of the people who fought for your right to do this in the 70s, in the 50s, who were the ones who were getting murdered, who were the ones getting put in jail, the ones who were writing for my right to be able to do this and live openly. I feel like every time I put on a lash, I'm doing it for Marsha P. Johnson, for Sylvia Rivera, who were the ones who were fighting on the front lines. I feel like I'm doing this for Antoine Debani, the house of all the New York for people who were at Stonewall riots, all Lily Savage, people in the UK who were doing it and who are big activists for us. And I feel like every time I put that on there, I've got their confidence running through me. And that's not just me saying that is a genuine thought I always feel I have, is that the blood of drag runs through every queen and every king, every non-binary performer. And it's their blood, it's their energy, and their gift to us. And that just makes me feel so free and incredible. And it lets that fear of toxic masculinity, toxic femininity, toxic binary, just in general, just to go, and I can be my own self. And that's what I love about drag so much.
Totally. That is the phrase of the night. Toxic binary. Get it in the bin.
Toxic binary, get it up.
Completely. Obviously, lockdown, COVID-19, all of this, all this stuff that's been happening over the last year has put LGBT plus arts like drag and other performance spaces out of commission for a while.
Mm-hmm.
How has that impacted your drag persona and your creativity? Have you kind of really found it uplifting and pushing forward, or has it been a struggle to get the lashes on and find the energy?
I go through what I call my roller coaster ride. We all have been on one of them. But for me, at the start of lockdown, I was super, super fortunate, and I was able to host my own show that I hosted and organised myself. I was getting to perform very regularly in the big cities. I was getting to do privately, and I was on a massive drag high. I was saying it coming out of October last 2019, and then into January, I was like, "This is going to be my year."
No, isn't it?
I don't think. And I was absolutely heartbroken. And for the first few months of the year of 2020, I would say I want to use the word depressed, because I felt like I'd lost my livelihood. I'd lost the opportunity to make all the new friends and all that kind of stuff you do in the club scene and doing shows. And then around May, March, in between those 2-3 months, I entered in a competition that my friend was running, a makeup competition, which was it was a Fright Club. It was a pageant from Brain of Destruction, who hosted a show at Fancy Labyrinth, multiple shows actually. Excuse me. And we had to recreate these kind of like apocalyptic style looks. And I said, "Oh great, I'm a festive makeup artist. This is great." And I started to do different things with my makeup I'd never done before, because prior to lockdown, I was working very regularly, so I never had time to just sit in front of the mirror and go, "Okay, let's just, how do I like this? How does it?" I would just get it on, get going, and I looked a hot mess. And so I went, "Oh, I can do this," because I never used to draw on eyebrows. My lips would be complete. I never used to contour. If you look at the photographs, they are cursed images. And so I found my whole new aesthetic and an ability for makeup I never knew I had. And so I just harnessed that all over lockdown. And I say this with the truest and utmost, it sounds strange, I am so grateful for the lockdown we had, because it meant I could really focus on myself, mentally and physically, but also on Thomas, not just Ivy, and really know that whenever we can come back, whether that's 6 months or 6 years, I'm going to look this shit. I'm going to know my words. I'm going to know my moves. I've gained so many skills. I'm learning to sew now. So I'm like, I'm going to come out of this stronger, mentally and physically, which I'm so grateful for. And I just cannot wait for the day that they're like, "Okay, coronavirus is no more. Get out there, get hammered." And you're just going to see me going, "Oh yeah, oh yeah."
Giving out the whole 2-8 counts.
Double bit.
That's it though. I think
Keep going.
that's fantastic, and essentially that's kind of what we're trying to do as Shaper Caper. We're a dance company, but we are trying to branch out and like learning new skills and try and occupy spaces that actually we hadn't necessarily considered before lockdowns. I think what you're saying there is really interesting. I think our community generally is like resilient. It's like, okay, we can't do this, but what can we do? What's next?
Exactly. And there's one person, two people actually need to really commemorate. It's the managers of the Greenwood Cafe in Edinburgh, which over the lockdown were able to fundraise and open a queer, sober, safe-based cafe in the heart of Edinburgh, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. Please go check them out. This is a complete. Please go check them out on social media and go in when it's safe. And I feel like that kind of community building within a really dark time has been phenomenal, because for us, our communities have only had clubs, which I will admit are great, but have their own downsides, as they are primarily filled with alcohol and drugs in most cases as well. And it's a very direct situation, whereas we don't have many sober spaces and chill spaces where we can just relax and not feel the need to take up narcotics and addictive substances. I mean, the pan au chocolat are addictive, but
I'm sure in the grand scheme of things, yeah.
It gives an opportunity take back a healthy step back and go, okay, how can we create and support our communities, but also do that? And drag queen mystical guru Oscar Kirk Hansen, and I'm so dreadful for getting the other guy, Mark, I believe his name is, or Anton. I'm terrible at names. Remember when I did that? Love you both. Created this phenomenal space, and that's what I really want to see more of in the next 1 or 2 years, hopefully, around the country and around the world. Get drag queens booked, though.
Absolutely, get drag queens booked and pay them and follow them and everything, yes, because, you know, we've kind of mentioned it before, but most of our LGBTQ plus history is from the drag artists, the queens, the trans performers, the gender non-conforming performers. It has been the artists, and activism oftentimes kind of go hand in hand, or wig and wig, I feel like. So
Wig and wig.
Totally, it's great to see. So, and I think as well what you're saying there about more sober spaces, we love nothing more than cutting shapes and, you know, whatever on a Saturday night, but it's great for people, as you say, to have a sober space where they can, you know, feel safe if they're not in a position where they're able to be in a club or a pub or anything like that. So I think that's absolutely something that's really important as well.
I think it's so important to have that.
Completely. You've kind of like touched on it then. I was going to ask you what your hopes for the community were going forward in the new lockdown. Sorry, not in the new lockdown. My goodness, no way. Once lockdown's finished, when there's no more new lockdown. New normal, I meant to say, whatever that's going to be. But just since we are, you know, in a LGBT History Month, just to kind of like round off, in your opinion, how important is it to know about LGBTQ plus history?
Oh, so important. So important. I speak very on personal experience. I learned absolutely nothing about LGBT history in high school or in primary school. And I learned very little of it until 2018 when I had to research myself. So I was like, if I'm going to be a drag queen, I need to know my history. And I feel like it's quite shocking that so many young LGBT people, and even some straight people, don't know the history. And I feel like if we are to live in one harmonious society, I can folk, we really should have an understanding of our own history, because our own history intertwines in the good and the bad. You know what I mean? Like, we worked together on wars, we served each other, we helped build societies, but we also tore each other down and threw each other in jail. So I feel like we should focus our energy in teaching the history, including the bad stuff, to show our growth as a community and as a human race, basically. Because if we choose to ignore one group, one sect, one belief, because it doesn't align with who we are, so there's no point in knowing it, then we're missing out on a whole different language of love, of learning. It's ridiculous in my opinion. And I really do hope that there can be education and understanding for the new generation, the younger generation who are coming up in drag and out of drag, or questioning, or just want to be an ally in our history. I really do hope that they can get the resources and the help to learn that, and they can learn that in sober, LGBT-friendly spaces. And I touched on that previously before, but I also feel another thing should be, everyone should do drag just at least once. That's my big hope for the community as well. Everyone, straight people, do drag. It is the best thing ever. It breaks down boundaries, it breaks down your personal beliefs, and it helps support you in ways you never knew you needed it to support you. And I feel that from experience. I feel like everyone over lockdown, over the next, I don't know how long, should put on a wig, put on a pair of heels. You don't have to wear heels, I don't really mind. And just have a good time with it. Sit in your living room, be like Patsy from AbFab, just there like, hey, darling. Have fun with it. Yeah. That's what I think everyone should do in lockdown. They should be like, we're clap for the NHS, Thursdays we all go out and drag. We're doing our garden.
That sounds a bit right.
I think we should do fun. And just take away the negative from it all. The good drag performers of our history have had to, in the darkest times, raise everyone up, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And I feel like we're doing that now, and I feel like people should do that within their own lives, if that's, you know, if it's something they've been wanting to do over the past 5 years, and now all of a sudden you don't have to worry about going out or being seen. You can do it now safely and feel proud of it. So I say go for it right now. Do it.
Do it.
I want you. What was that thing? What was that thing they had in the army? I want you.
That's the one.
To do drag.
Yes, I want you to do drag.
The religious are going to hate me. They're trying to convert us to drag queens. they are.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, Ivy, I couldn't have said it better myself. You're totally right. It's just about breaking down boundaries, find whatever creativity works for you and go with it and run with it. With that being said, is there any, where can people find you if they want to follow you or keep up to date with what you're doing on social media or anything?
Yeah, I have several social media platforms. I primarily use Instagram. My Instagram handle, I'll say this moment, is Ivy_Adamus_. My Facebook page is Ivy Adamus, 2 words of course. And a special news is I have a YouTube channel which has just been uploaded, and I'm going to be bringing very exciting new drag content. It's not what you'd expect a drag queen to be doing. It's not going to. There will be some makeup tutorials. There will be some performances. But think RuPaul and Julia Childs. That's all I'm going to say for now. That's all I'm going to say.
I'm sold.
But that's where you can find me, and it's Ivy Adamus on YouTube as well. If you find me on Facebook, well done. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter as Ivy_Adamus. I'm making a Patreon for behind the scenes content, which will be labelled as Ivy Adamus as well. So it's all the same, Ivy Adamus. If you find my criminal record, delete it, you Disney. But the rest of it's all Ivy Adamus. It's all out there.
It's all out there. We'll comment on it as well, like on the stream, so that people can just kind of directly click and find you as well. That's the one. Well, Ivy, thank you so much for your time. We really, really appreciate it, and thank you for brightening up our evening. We much appreciate.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Ivy, again for your time, and of course for Becky Kaufman's time earlier on in the programme. You can see some more of those conversations crop up over the next few weeks. Now, as mentioned there with Ivy, drag artists are often seen as one of the staples of LGBTQ plus nightlife. We can see them in all sorts of spaces such as LGBTQ plus pride parades. We can see them at various queer events. Mostly we will see them in venues such as nightclubs, bars and other such spaces. Now, as well as for our community, we have found that oftentimes these venues are also extremely popular with our straight cis allies as well. It's a space where people can come, laugh, joke around, throw some shapes and cut a rug while seeing some fantastic look turning and all sorts as well. But we might often think, where exactly did our legendary nightlife come from? How has it evolved? And exactly where do we think it's going? All of these are questions that are going to be covered by our fantastic LGBTQ plus correspondent, Eleanor Walker, to chat about exactly where our legendary nightlife came from. Over to you, Eleanor.
Thank you so much, Alex. So yes, today we're going to talk about the history of gay bars and queer spaces in the UK, mainly in the capital of London, because that's where most of the buzz was historically. So let's get stuck in, shall we? There's not much known about social places for gay or queer people to meet up in the 1700s. This was because secrecy was absolutely vital for our community in the UK at that time. Plus, documentation wasn't that great then either. However, the first more well-known part of our nightlife history happened in the 18th century in molly houses. Molly houses were where mainly gay men and sometimes other queer folks would meet to find community and be able to have sex with one another in either in a brothel setting or just space to have sex with a longer term partner. Remember, this was in a time that legally they could have been hanged for these so-called sexual crimes. It was common for men to go to molly houses to do drag or female impersonation, as it was known then. Couples could also get married there, and although these were not recognised legally, they could celebrate along with their community. Most molly houses were disguised as coffee shops or pubs, and some were in private residences. These molly houses were also regularly raided. 2 of such raids became particularly famous. In Mother Clapp's Molly House, very aptly named, in London, which at its peak was perhaps the most notorious and busy molly house. When raided in 1726, 3 of its occupants were hanged. The other took place at the White Swan, where Reverend John Church, regarded as the first openly gay minister in England, would perform same-sex marriages. Moving forward quite a bit, 1912 saw the first gay bar, which was known as the Cave of the Golden Calf. With only wealthy patrons due to the high door fee, the bar allowed some same-sex intimacy and would stay open until very late. Gateway clubs became the first lesbian bar in London in the 1930s, which actually stayed open until 1985. For more working class queer folks, there was the Lady Malcolm's Servants' Ball, which was known amongst the community for a great gay old time. Now, homosexuality was decriminalised in 1967. So when we look at the 1970s, there was a huge surge in gay bars and queer spaces, and people would often use squats actually for same-sex relations too. Bars, clubs, saunas and other venues were finally allowed to exist in peace, or at least in relative peace. The 70s also were a time for further separation between the so-called straight gay scene and then the more queer spaces. A lot of people say that they see little change today with the distinct difference between white macho venues and other queer venues today. Bringing fully up into the 21st century and over the last decade or so, unfortunately queer venues like gay or lesbian bars have been disappearing quicker than you can say, get your coat, you've pulled. This is generally down to rents being a lot higher and hookup apps such as Grindr, naughty Grindr, meaning that people weren't populating bars to find potential partners. And now with the very unwelcome Miss Rona, these venues closing is even more likely. A little closer to home though for us Scots at the In Out crowd, however, there's great independent places still going. For example, we have CC Bloom's in Edinburgh, Polo Lounge and Katie's Bar in Glasgow, Cheers in Aberdeen and Closet Bar in Dundee, just to name a few. And when it's safe to do so, happy partying and support your local gay bars. Also, I just wanted to say, give us a shout on hello@shapercaper.com if you fancy hearing about a certain LGBTQ+ theme a little more in depth in this special correspondence segment. It'd be so nice to hear from you. Back to you, Alex.
Thank you so much, Eleanor. Oh, it's just hearing all of those places, CC Bloom's, Katie's Bar. Oh my goodness, it seems like a million years ago when that's when we used to go and, you know, cut shapes and meet up with people on a Friday night. Now my Friday nights are spent wandering about the supermarket doing my mom's shopping for her. So it definitely has changed quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the excitement of the week, the supermarket trip.
That's exactly what it is. And you know, you tend to find that I'm actually starting to almost like perform when I'm stoting down the biscuit aisle.
On the trolley.
But I don't know if I'm the only one that's thinking that. So, I mean, me and Eleanor have put together a little bit of a kind of skit on what we think that our supermarket Friday night feels and looks like versus how it seems to other people. Let's have a wee look, shall we?
And what are we all doing on a Friday, Saturday night now? Not slaying the house down boots, cutting shapes in my brand new suit. 20 quid off ASOS. No. I'm stuck, wandering round the supermarket, doing my ma's messages. Oh, speak of the devil.
Hello, Mum. I'm in the supermarket. I've got a mask on. Well, I'm sorry you can't hear me clearly, but I'm not taking it off in the middle of the shop, so I'll get flung out. Alright, fine. But listen, I'm not speaking to you for long. I'm skating on thin enough ice as it is, wearing a skip cap to Waitrose. Listen, I don't know why you come to this place. You can hardly find anything. Aye, I'm only getting essentials. Listen, I shouldn't be too much longer, alright? Just let me go and do your shopping in peace. I'll just drop it off outside, anti-bac it, spray bleach it, put it inside, and then you can just leave it there for 7 to 8 hours before you can bring it into the fridge. As usual, right? Okay, right, love you too, right? Bye-bye, bye-bye. Can I help you, hen?
I'm sorry. Could you help me? My horoscope said that I shouldn't reach high for anything today. Could you get that tin of beans for me, please?
Don't mind if I do, pal. Right, Alex, It's finally your time to shine. Was this the tin you were after for, my love?
I think I'll ask someone else.
An Asda, I would have at least got a very good for that.
All based on a true story. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching this episode of the In Out Crowd. Thank you so much to our special guest, Ivy Adamus. Thank you so much to our brief special guest, Becky Kaufman, that we'll see more of in the coming weeks. And of course, thank you so much to my fantastic team, Thomas Small and Eleanor Walker. We will be back not next week, but the week after for another episode of the In Out Crowd. And of course, final thank you to the Corra Foundation for their funding and their hashtag Shift the Power programme. Shift the Power. Ooh, I think I might need some protein shakes before I can properly do that, but I'm doing my best. Thank you so much again, everyone, and we will see you all very soon.